Welcome back, Defenders. Today we hit another milestone. This is a big one. And officially now, over 10,000 Russian tanks have been destroyed by Ukraine over the last 3 years. 10,000. That is a huge number. And your first question might be, how many tanks does Russia have? And our best estimate prior to the full-scale invasion in 2022 is that Russia had 17,500 tanks. Now, the majority of these tanks were not operational. They were in long-term deep storage, some not being moved in decades. And over the last 3 years, all of Russia's deep storage sites have been emptied to try and fit these tanks and get them to the front lines in Ukraine. And they just keep being destroyed by FPV drones and javelins and NLAWs and artillery and landmines. It's not a good place to be, the modern battlefield, if you're a tank. So Russia has severe shortages of armored vehicles across the front lines, which explains this picture. This is a real photograph of Russian soldiers on camelback, using camels in the occupied territories to fight this war. Camels. So Russia has a problem with a shortage of vehicles and a shortage of supply trucks, tanks, everything. Russia installs anti-drone nets to shield supply routes in Donetsk. The scale of the project remains unclear, but if proven effective, Russia will likely expand these protective nets everywhere they can put them. And I don't think this is the solution. I don't think this is the answer, to just put nets up supply roads to protect all your trucks. Ukraine drone production tops 2.5 million a year. Aircraft numbers on track to grow. The deadliest weapon in the Ukrainian military is manufactured domestically 96.3% of the time, and it's almost always a cheap quadcopter toting an explosive. This benefits the defender. The Russians have to expose themselves. They have to go out in the open in order to advance. And Ukraine is waiting. They have surveillance drones covering the entire front lines. They then launch their FPVs and quadcopters, and they use simple explosives to destroy all of these vehicles. To put this in perspective, I love specific numbers. Ukraine deploys 200,000 drones monthly to counter the 5-to-1 Russian infantry advantage near the city of Pokrovsk. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. So let's check in on the city of Pokrovsk. The city of Avdiivka fell almost a year ago, and this is the next major city down the road. I think the pre-war population of Pokrovsk was close to 50,000. And everyone was screaming 5 months ago, the city is about to fall, the city is about to fall. And Pokrovsk still stands. In the era of FPV drones, would you rather be in an open field or a tree-lined trench, or in concrete structures? The Ukrainians have a tremendous advantage being in the city. Now the Russians are gobbling up the farm fields surrounding the city. They're trying to cut off this supply road, but they're exposed. There's nowhere to take shelter from simple FPV drones in these open fields, these small villages. So yes, the Russians still have a tremendous manning advantage, but every time they come to one of these mid-sized towns, Avdiivka, Bakhmut, Pokrovsk, it's a kill zone. 5-to-1 losses, just trying to get into the city. It's a nightmare for the Russians. According to Zelensky, the Kursk incursion stopped the Russian invasion of Zaporizhia. We don't know what the intelligence is, but yeah, I would imagine that over 6 months ago, if Ukraine hadn't launched this offensive into Kursk, Russia would have used their reserves to probably start more offensives in the Zaporizhia region. I do know they were experimenting with trying to get across the Dnipro River to the North Bank and Kherson. So there is debate. Was this a good idea for Ukraine to invade Russia? And we'll never know what would have happened if they hadn't. But yeah, I would argue if you're going to fight the Russians, you can either do it on your territory, near the city of Zaporizhia, or you can do it on their territory. This has been a disaster for the Russians. Ukraine is still sticking with their game plan of knocking all of Russia's oil refineries offline. Drones hit 6 million ton Afivsky oil complex in southern Russia. This is in the Krasnodar region. Fire breaks out at Russia's Saratov oil refinery after another Ukrainian drone assault. Last night, Ukrainian drones again targeted key facilities in the Saratov Oblast, striking an oil refinery and causing explosions near the Engels Air Base. There are videos, as always, I'll link them down below. And it can always get worse. These attacks are not going to stop until Russia stops this war. So here comes the political segment. Everything is changing by the day. Trump's envoy on Ukraine and Russia, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, is going to visit Kyiv next week. So not this week, but next week. High-level Trump officials are all going to be in Ukraine. General Keith Kellogg, as well as, I think, the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of the Treasury. You could really increase the sanctions. Trump confirms rumors on U.S. envoy visit to Ukraine. So here's the tweet, and this is good news. I am sending Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent to Ukraine to meet with President Zelensky. This war must and will end soon. Too much death and destruction, the U.S. has spent billions, blah, blah, blah. We like the Treasury Secretary. During his confirmation hearings, he said that sanctions on Russia to this point have not been tough enough. Keith Kellogg is in favor of increasing sanctions. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is in favor of increasing sanctions. And I'm pretty sure Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz are also in favor. But once again, Trump is the decider. You might have also heard of this headline, Congressman Joe Wilson to announce Lend-Lease Act for war-winning aid to Ukraine. Joe Wilson is a Republican from the state of South Carolina, a strong supporter of Ukraine. Today I will introduce the Freedom First Lend-Lease Act to give President Trump flexible authorities to send war-winning weapons to our partners, including Ukraine, to deter the war criminal Putin, as Biden should have done long ago. Bring Russia to the table through American strength. Now this sounds fantastic, but this won't happen unless Trump wants it. Speaker Johnson will never schedule a vote unless Donald Trump says he wants this power. In general, Donald Trump likes having more power. So it's possible this might get a vote and it might be passed, just giving the option for Trump, even if he never chooses to exercise it. But there's a problem. John Ridge, I've been following him for a while. I trust his analysis, and this is what he says about, in general, Lend-Lease Acts. Without appropriations to replace defense articles granted to Ukraine, this will go nowhere, just like the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend-Lease Act of 2022. So Joe Biden 3 years ago did pass a Lend-Lease Act, and then he never used it, because Congress was also appropriating funds, and he just used the drawdown funds to send weapons. The DoD needs procurement funds to promptly backfill transfers. Ukraine can only reimburse leases over decades. So if the United States lends or leases anything to Ukraine, the United States now doesn't have it in its inventory. Now I know, to my international audience, we look like weapons hoarders, and we are, but we do have our own requirements under DoD regulations to have this many of this many of this. So we can't just send Ukraine whatever we want and then hope they give it back to us or pay us back 10 years in the future. Congress would still have to allocate money to backfill anything we send to Ukraine. This is the explanation why the first Lend-Lease 3 years ago was never used. According to Trump advisor, Europe must take lead in security guarantees for Ukraine. I've not shown a clip of the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz in a while, but he was on NBC's Meet the Press. I am going to play this clip and we'll talk about it.
The president's prepared to put all of those issues on the table this week, including the future of U.S. aid to Ukraine. We need to recoup those costs. And that is going to be a partnership with the Ukrainians in terms of their rare earths, their natural resources, and their oil and gas, and also buying ours. Those conversations are going to happen this week. And I think an underlying principle here is that the Europeans have to own this conflict going forward. President Trump is going to end it. And then in terms of security guarantees, that is squarely going to be with the Europeans.
If there is a ceasefire, if there is negotiations and Russia agrees to something, Trump is saying that Europe has to enforce it. European peacekeepers have to be deployed to Ukraine to prevent any kind of war from starting again. But Mike Waltz used this language. We need to recoup those costs. What does he mean by that? Trump claims Ukraine essentially agreed to give the United States access to its rare earth minerals. These are not rare earth minerals. I mean, there's like a little bit, but these are just natural resources. Calling them rare, I think, just tricks Trump into wanting them more. But no, these are not rare earths. Yeah, iron and titanium and lithium are not rare earth elements. But here's the map. Here is the map that everyone is staring at, and Trump seems to think he's going to get something. So every day he does interviews and he says stupid things. I'm not going to deny this. And he said something incredibly stupid in this interview. But we're going to talk about the money aspect. So I apologize, but I'm going to have to play this clip.
I want to have our money secured because we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. And, you know, they may make a deal, they may not make a deal. They may be Russian someday or they may not be Russian someday, but we're going to have.
They may be Russian someday? No, I don't think the people of Ukraine who have their own ethnic, cultural, and language identity are ever going to be Russian someday. But he said it. Whatever. We need to get to the second part of this clip.
Have all this money in there, and I say, I want it back. And I told them that I want the equivalent, like $500 billion worth of rare earth. And they've essentially agreed to do that. So at least we don't feel stupid. Otherwise, we're stupid. I said to them, we have to get something. We can't continue to pay this money. You know,
we have to get it back. I said I wanted the equivalent of $500 billion. So no analysis was done. Trump just tossed out a very large number he thought was good, and Ukraine agreed to it. But $500 billion is more, way more than the United States has provided to Ukraine. To this date, $183 billion has been allocated, $130 billion is still obligated, and $86 billion has been dispersed. So Trump keeps saying we need to recoup our losses because we've spent hundreds of billions. It's not plural, it's not 200 or more, so it's singular. But is more American aid going to be provided? Like if Ukraine agrees to some kind of deal worth $500 billion that the United States gets, what additional aid and support is the United States going to provide? The language that Donald Trump is using is saying we're done providing aid and we want to get our money back. Biden allocated $183 billion and we want Ukraine to give us $500 billion back. But what more is going to be provided? How is this going to work? Like, this is getting a little weird. Donald Trump also is doubling down on saying he wants to take control of Gaza. This was not a slip-up. This was not a gaffe. This is U.S. foreign policy. He keeps saying it. So he's on Air Force One now. There's airplane noise in the background. But he's once again saying, I'm committed to buying and owning Gaza.
I'm committed to buying and owning Gaza. As far as us rebuilding it, we may give it to other states in the Middle East to build sections of it. Other people may do it through our auspices, but we're committed to owning it, taking it, and making sure.
Who's paying for this? Is the American taxpayer going to buy Gaza from Israel because Gaza's an occupied territory? Who's going to clear out the 2 million people? American soldiers? This is a new forever war in the Middle East. Nobody in America voted for this. He's also talking about annexing Canada again. This is not going away. He's saying we're making our country larger.
I have more time to do what I want to do. So we're making our country larger. We're making our country stronger. And in the case of Canada, if this should happen, I don't know how they can do it without us. Because without the U.S., Canada really doesn't have a country.
Without the United States, Canada doesn't have a country. This is not a gaffe. This is not a negotiating tactic. This is not about getting concessions about border security. He actually wants to do this. This is American imperialism. This is about empire. The leader of our country is talking about making our country larger by expanding into our neighbors with hostile force. He said it again with an interview with Bret Baier. I think Canada would be much better off as the 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year to Canada. This got community noted because Trump is lying. The United States does not lose or subsidize Canada by $200 billion. This is a completely made-up number. The U.S.-Canada trade deficit in 2024 was $63 billion. Having a trade deficit of $63 billion is lower than our trade deficit with China, the European Union, Mexico, and Vietnam. Because the trade deficit with Vietnam is greater than Canada, are we going to annex Vietnam so we're not losing money? Trade deficits form from consumer preferences. If you don't want to have a trade deficit, you don't have to buy their stuff. But if we have capitalism, if we have free markets, and people want to buy stuff from Canada or Mexico or Vietnam, they should have the right to do so, without our president threatening to invade them. And I'll give you some polling data how stupid this is. By national poll, most Canadians and many Americans oppose Canada joining the United States. Nearly all Canadians, 77%, strongly or somewhat oppose Canada becoming part of the United States. Only 15% are in favor of it. Meanwhile, in the United States, 42% of Americans oppose this idea, 36% support, and 22% have no effing clue what the hell is going on in the United States anymore. And neither do the Russians. So let's go to the latest clip from Russia Media Monitor. Vladimir Solovyov says Russia doesn't care about Trump's peace plan. He made two promises that he couldn't fulfill: to drain the Washington swamp and improve relations with Russia. This is Solovyov talking about Trump's first election in 2016. But this Trump is different. If we don't reach an understanding, we may clash. He understands this, he understands strength. Unlike Europe, Ukraine, and many others, we do have strength. Trump's main fear is World War III. He openly says it. I think he doesn't fear anyone yet. He is euphoric from coming to power. That's what I think. And I think that you're wrong in your thinking. What are you basing it on? Studying Trump's books and his speeches? His psychological portraits? What are you basing it on? Trump is not your average incoming president of the United States. By the way, Trump also promised to make peace between North Korea and South Korea. He even arranged a meeting on the 38th parallel. They were even shaking hands. We all know how it ended. Perhaps this is how he is envisioning the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Someone from the Ukrainian side will shake hands and he will say, "I made peace. Now I'm out of here. You guys figure this out." For obvious reasons, this absolutely doesn't suit us. I mentioned this in my video when Trump was first elected in November. I immediately thought of these weird summits between Trump and Kim Jong-un. Back in 2018, Donald Trump believed he could broker peace on the Korean Peninsula. He really wanted to win a Nobel Peace Prize. But shocker, the North Koreans lie, and the North Koreans have no interest in opening up or becoming a normal society. So Trump just gave up. He just walked away from it and hasn't spoken about North Korea really at all since 2018. So these are the Russians saying the exact same thing might happen. Donald Trump could give his best effort for a couple of weeks, realize that Russia doesn't actually want peace, and then he's just going to walk away from the whole situation, tell the Europeans they're on their own, and then he'll never talk about it. He'll just pretend like the war is not happening, and everything in the United States is normal. But everything in the United States is not normal. Elon Musk spreads false claim about US control of Ukrainian media. This is Elon Musk promoting WikiLeaks, and at this point, guys, WikiLeaks is just Russian intelligence. It's the FSB guiding everything they do. So WikiLeaks claims that USAID was funding over 6,200 journalists across 707 media outlets, and 9 out of 10 media outlets in Ukraine are being controlled by USAID. This is, of course, insane. This is false. The misinformation started from an interview with Oksana Romanuk, director of the Institute of Mass Information. During the conversation, she stated that almost 90% of Ukrainian media survived thanks to grants. Grants from foundations, institutions, other countries. Some of them, yes, came from USAID, but that doesn't mean USAID controls them, let alone 9 out of 10. That's insane. But it doesn't matter. Every day on social media, Elon Musk is lying. He is the biggest spreader of disinformation and lies ever in human history. And he is trying to overload everyone and everything with lies to destroy everything. He's trying to destroy Western democracy, to empower China, to empower Russia. I really do need to make a dedicated video why he's doing this. I know a lot of people love his cars and they love his rockets and they think he's a funny, interesting guy, but he's doing serious harm. And the constitutional crisis happening now, today, in the United States, is that Elon Musk is attacking the judiciary. Members of Trump's administration every day now are complaining about judges and complaining about the courts. Elon Musk changed his name on Twitter to Harry Balls, but this is the richest man in the world with 217 million followers. Democracy in America is being destroyed by a judicial coup. An activist judge is not a real judge. This is the shit he is saying every day to his 200 million followers, to get them to hate federal judges, to hate the judiciary for enforcing and upholding the law and the Constitution. And Elon Musk is so evil. He is going after the children of federal judges who rule against him. Judge John McConnell, the federal judge from Rhode Island who ordered the Trump administration to unfreeze billions of dollars in federal grants, has a daughter who works for the federal government. That is not a conflict of interest when you have a child who works for the federal government, because tens of millions of people, American citizens, work for the federal government. So Elon Musk is posting her picture, her name, her position, her job, to scare and intimidate this federal judge and any federal judge that might rule against him in the future. Now I read the comments, guys. I know what you're saying to me, and you can't bully me in the comments. I stand by my principles. I served as an active duty officer for 6 years, and I took an oath to the Constitution. We don't swear oaths to presidents, kings, or dictators. This person who was subscribed to my channel said, "Grow up, Jake. When you're trying to save a country, use any and all tools available. Survival comes first." My response to my subscriber: spoken like a true fascist. I will resist you and I will defend the American Constitution. This is America. We have 3 separate co-equal branches of government that share power, and we have a series of checks and balances on that shared power. This has been the form of government we've had for 250 years. And it's this form of government that has made us the wealthiest and most powerful nation in the history of the world. So I'm not willing to give it up. I'm not willing to give up separation of powers and checks and balances to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And at the moment, we're having a constitutional crisis. Now, the Republicans control Congress, and they're willingly giving up their power to the executive branch. Except constitutionally, they can't do that. The Republicans in Congress are cowards, and they're scared of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. But only Congress has the power of the purse to tax and allocate funds, and any government agencies created by Congress, the executive can't destroy, cannot delete, cannot fire, cannot remove, unless Congress debates and votes on it. If the executive branch can make all decisions concerning taxes and revenue and the creation and destruction of agencies, then why do we have Congress? What are these people for if the president legitimately has the power to do whatever he wants? So Congress has already given up. Congress has been defeated at least until the 2026 elections. So the only thing remaining, standing in the way of Elon Musk and Donald Trump, is the independence of the judiciary. So every day, Elon Musk, to his 200 million followers, is attacking federal judges and attacking the independence of the judiciary, threatening their children. And this is really putting the carriage before the horse, even for Elon Musk. The guy has no chill, and he's honestly so dumb. He's making this really easy to stop him, and U.S. district courts have ruled against him. Now, for supporters, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate comments for this. Make the legal argument. Make the constitutional argument why Donald Trump has the power to do any of this. And they're not. Donald Trump's own White House counsel are not making constitutional arguments. Elon Musk is not making constitutional arguments. So they have the power to appeal all of this. And I believe they are. Right now, Trump and Musk are getting smacked down in district courts. They're going to appeal to the appellate courts. But eventually, in like 6 months, this is going to make it to the Supreme Court. And the Republicans have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. 3 of those judges were appointed by Trump in his first term. So what is going to happen when the Supreme Court upholds the Constitution and rules against Elon Musk and Donald Trump? This is going to happen this summer. And America is going to be ripped apart because Donald Trump and Elon Musk are not going to respect the courts. And the courts have no way to enforce a ruling. It's the job of the executive branch to enforce rulings by the judicial branch. This is going to be a nightmare year, guys. It's only going to get worse here in America. So Ukraine has to hold on. Ukraine has to keep fighting. Russian Volunteer Corps commander says Moscow may wage war against Ukraine for another 10 years because it doesn't care about its own casualties. I think at the rate they're going, even 10 years, like they're not going to have enough Russians to lose. So they're getting creative. Russia falsely promises work in the occupied areas to migrants from Central Asia, but then sends them to the trenches instead. Russia lures migrants from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan by offering them high-paying jobs in reconstruction, only to then be press-ganged into the Russian military to fight on the front lines. Nobody should be going to Russia thinking they're going to get a high-paying good job. Russian soldier convicted of killing 4 fellow servicemen sentenced to life in prison. Here is a hero of Russia who got drunk one night and then killed his entire leadership while they were sleeping. This happened in November of 2023 with the 17th Tank Regiment. His name was Nikita Pasmentukov, and yeah, I would say he was probably upset about something that his leadership was doing. Russia is sending hundreds of wounded soldiers to North Korean hospitals for medical treatment. Russia has so many casualties, so many wounded men. They're now sending their own soldiers to North Korea for medical care and rehabilitation. That's a hard no for me, even if I was a wounded Russian soldier. I would choose to stay in Russia than to go to North Korea for medical care and help. It's just crazy, guys. Russia probes explosion on an oil tanker. So an oil tanker in the Baltic near St. Petersburg, there was an explosion in the engine room. It's unclear if this was accidental or sabotage. Given the state of this Shadow Fleet tanker, I'm guessing it was negligence and lack of maintenance and safety regulations that caused the explosion. But there is concern. Finland braces for potential oil spill after tanker explosion in northwestern Russia. I don't understand why the Baltic states are continuing to let these ecological bombs pass through their territorial waters. Emergency crews mobilized as Chinese cargo ship runs aground in Russia's Far East. This is a ship carrying Russian energy exports that ran aground off the Sakhalin Island. And yeah, I'm just going to direct you guys to the fantastic YouTube channel, What's Going On with Shipping. Sal put out a video this morning explaining what's going on with these 2 ships, as well as the damaged icebreaker that hit another ship in the Arctic last week. Russia's shipping industry is having a catastrophic event almost every week now. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Latvia to send armored vehicles with a 700-kilometer range to Ukraine. Cool. Thank you so much, Latvia. Japan to provide Ukraine with $58 million to rebuild infrastructure. Thank you so much, the fantastic Japanese people. Lithuania provides nearly 33 million euros for tuition for Ukrainian refugees. Thank you so much, the fantastic people of Lithuania. Final clip I want to share with you is once again a Georgian protester. This is a girl who's been standing on the streets every night for 74 days. And she was joined by a Georgian man with an instrument who's going to play a familiar song. This truly is a solidarity moment for everyone in the world that doesn't want to live in a dictatorship, that doesn't want to live under autocracy, that wants real representation and real freedoms. Keep fighting, guys. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, more than ever, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.